Do you know what the Passivhaus standard is all about? Do you know what it includes and what it means when you talk about it? Today, I want to give you a little bit of an insight into the Passivhaus standard so that when you talk to someone about Passivhaus, that you know what the standard actually means. So let me share my little presentation with you. Okay, so here is a little bit of a summary of what the Passivhaus standard is all about. I want to just walk you through that briefly. Good. So in the Smart Plus Academy formula sheet, you have everything there at your fingertips that you need to know about the Passivhaus standard. So this formula sheet you will receive when you sign up for one of our certification courses. I just wanted to show you here. This is the Passivhaus standard. So it explains what the Passivhaus standard is all about. Then below that are our Passivhaus requirements. So here the Passivhaus requirements, they are also mentioned in the Passivhaus standard. And then we have our Passivhaus classes, so the different classes of Passivhaus that I will explain to you in a second as well. Good, let's get started. So the Passivhaus criteria are all in this new standard. NFIT also are part of the common criteria document for Passivhaus, NFIT, and low energy buildings. This is the version, the latest version from May 2022, and it's available for download for free. So you can read it up. If you're interested in more, then this is all available online. So let me start with one very important definition that we need to know when we talk about Passivhaus and the standard. We need to understand the difference between load and demand. Yeah, so because we will talk about the heating load and the heating demand a lot. And yeah, if we know what we're talking about, that's obviously better. So the heating and cooling demand in kilowatt hours per annum is the amount of final energy needed to heat or cool a building over a time period, like a year or a month. So typically we'll talk about a year. So here that A stands for annum, so that's per year. So we typically talk about a year. So that is required to find out how much final energy you need to condition your building. So we're not only talking about heating, but we can also talk on the cooling side. So that's both sides requires energy to get your house to a standard, and we need to know how much that is. So in the end, that's the amount of energy that will appear on your bill. Yeah. Then the cooling load on the other side is the power needed to maintain thermal comfort in a building at one point in time. So here we're now talking about the most extreme time of the year. So this could be the coldest or the hottest day. And that is necessary to size our heating or cooling system, to know how big that system needs to be. So you can remember on this side, on the demand, it is your bill. And on the other side, it's the size of your system. So I think once we've understood that difference, we can now go a little bit deeper into the Passivhaus standard. So how does the Passivhaus standard work? The outcome of the Passivhaus is the following. So we have a thermal comfort zone that we want to always keep in our indoor environment between 20 and 25 degrees and 30 to 60% relative humidity. In our environment, we also want to have less than 80% relative humidity at any surface to avoid mold growth. And the air quality needs to have less than 1,000 parts per million of CO2 for a good indoor air quality. How do we achieve that? We achieve that by we're allowed to use a certain amount of energy to achieve that outcome. And that is written in the standard. And that is for our heating demand. We're allowed to use 15 kilowatt hours per square meter a year for our building, or our load. So now we already know the difference between demand and load. So our load can be less than 10 watts per square meter. Then on our cooling side, it's the same. Our cooling demand can be 15 kilowatt hours per square meter a year, or we could have the option to say we don't want a cooling system inside, and then we have the option of having 10% of the time and overheating over 25 degrees. Now we have to be a little bit careful with that, especially in hot countries, that overheating isn't too high, because it depends now how comfortable we are, depends how high that overheating is. It only says over 25 degrees. Now, if your home heats up to 30, 32 degrees, that's not good enough. But if it's a little bit of time at 26 or 27, then I'd say this is acceptable. And then we have our primary energy demand of 120 kilowatt hours per square meter a year, or primary energy renewable demand of 60 kilowatt hours per square meter a year. So that's the energy at the source of where we harvest that energy, and that's how much we're allowed to use. And this is not only for conditioning, this is also for any other energy needs that we have in our home, domestic hot water, appliances, and so on. Good. And then in our passive house, we also have quality control. So our air tightness needs to be below 0.6 air exchanges per hour. And we have our commissioning report from our mechanical ventilation system. We have our project documentation, our thermal bridge analysis, and in the end, we have our certifier and the certification process looking over our shoulder to make sure that this is a good quality build. Good. So this is the standard. As I said already, I mentioned that before, all our heating demand and load and our cooling demand and our primary energy. So the first 3 points here are energy related, whereas the last one is our quality control. So that air tightness really tells us that our passive house will be a good quality building. And what are the passive house requirements? So other requirements than our energy usage is, for example, our comfort zone needs to be between 20 and 25 degrees all year round with a relative humidity of 30 to 60%. Then we want an absolute humidity that relates to that of less than 12 grams per kilogram at 25 degrees. A minimum temperature at any point in the building, so at any thermal bridge or anywhere in your building of 12.6 degrees. That is to avoid the mold growth, yeah? So because if the temperature is lower, then we can get there a high relative humidity or even condensation, and then we could have mold in our building, which we really want to avoid. We also want to have less, a temperature difference of less than 4.2 Kelvin between our air temperature and our surface temperatures, because that would give us a draft feeling. But if it's less than 4.2 Kelvin, we don't get any draft. So in other words, we're living in a really comfortable home. And with our floor, we want to have less than 2 Kelvin difference between the ankles of a seated position and our head of our seated position. So that means that we're not getting that cold feet effect if we're staying below the 2 Kelvin. And minimum air supply, 30 cubic meters per person per hour. That's for our mechanical ventilation system to calculate how much air we need to bring into our building. Good. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you about today is our passive house classes. So because there's not just one in the standard, not just one class, it's different ones. So we've already learned what we're allowed to use in our passive house in energy. Okay, so we're allowed to use a certain amount of energy to condition our buildings. It's not a zero energy home. Just want to clarify that quickly. Because if we are saying we don't want to use any energy to condition our buildings, then our building envelope would have to be so much better and become so much more expensive and so much thicker, so much more materials to use, that Passive House has decided this level of the 15 kilowatt hours per square meter a year is a good level to maintain a good energy efficiency, but also to be affordable for Passive House. Good. So we're allowed to use this amount of energy. We've gone through that before, but now we're coming on top at a renewable energy generation. So obviously, ideally, we want to have a very low energy usage and we want to produce some energy. So and there comes these classes into play. We have our classic passive house where our primary energy is lower than 60 kilowatt hours per square meter a year, and we're not generating any renewable energy. Then if we want to achieve our plus, passive house plus, then we need to be below 45 kilowatt hours per square meter a year in our primary energy renewable demand, and we need to produce more than 60 kilowatt hours per square meter a year. And for our premium, it goes even further down lower than 30, and we need to produce 120. Okay, so that's the different classes. We still have our quality control. The air tightness stays the same at 0.6 air exchanges per hour at 50 Pascal. So here, again, the passive house and Enefit classes, just as a little summary. So our basic requirement is always a very low heating and cooling demand of lower than 15 kilowatt hours per square meter a year. But we're now adding the generation of renewable energy and a higher PER energy efficiency. Okay, so our classic means we're reducing our energy consumption. The plus means we're starting to produce energy. And the premium, we can then even start to store because we're producing so much energy. So that should always be your order of things: reduce, produce, store. If you have watched some of my previous videos, you know that I'm very passionate about that. If we haven't started to reduce our energy usage, it's not so clever to start producing energy, because the most sustainable energy is the one we're not using. That should always be our starting point. So reduce, produce, store, and that's what Passivhaus is really doing here. So our renewable energy generation goes up. Yeah, so we're producing more, and we're getting even more energy efficient with our homes, with our PER, energy efficiency. Good, that was it. A little bit of an overview of how the Passivhaus standard works, what the numbers are behind it. So hopefully next time you talk to someone, you can tell them a little bit about it. If you want to learn more, then join us in one of our courses. Obviously, we're going a lot deeper into that. You get a very deep understanding, a deep knowledge of those basics. But for now, thank you very much, and I'll see you next time in one of my other videos. So thank you very much, and bye for now.